Hello again. We are ready to go for our next session. Dipti here. Good to, this time I'll be talking about Ahana and how Ahana makes it really easy to run Presto in the cloud. Top 10 reasons how it does it. So when are you ready?
Ready to do this.
All right, let's do it. Number one, let's get going. So Presto Ahana brings compute and Presto into your environment. This means that anything that touches data, the Presto clusters, the Hive Metastore, the superset, everything is put into your account, and we bring that compute to your data. So how does this look on our app and the Ahana console, Wen?
Yeah. So in order for us to bring the compute to the data, which obviously has some performance as well as security benefits, the Ahana control plane basically just needs a role that then we can use to provision and manage your resources. We make this very simple with a CloudFormation template. You can also do this manually if you want more control. And from there, once we have the role, you can select your region, availability zones, CIDR block, CIDR range, and complete the setup. And off you go. We will be provisioning everything in your AWS account.
Sounds good. Number two, full cycle cluster management. Managing Presto clusters can be pretty tedious, especially if they are decent size. You have a lot of different clusters. With Ahana, you can create, stop, start, restart, delete with a click of a button. It's really easy to get going. So maybe you can show us how, Wen.
Yep, absolutely. So here's once you have your compute plane set up, here's what Ahana looks like. You can go to clusters, have a few running. It's very simple to create one, fill out a simple form, and off you're going to create clusters. I actually have a few clusters up and running, as I mentioned earlier. You can go ahead and take a look at these clusters and give you some information. And of course, you can stop, restart, delete these clusters, manage the entire lifecycle with a click of a button. I'm going to go ahead and stop this cluster, for example.
All right, number three, tuning Presto can be quite difficult. There's a lot of knowledge that's needed about the node properties, the catalog properties. There's thousands of configurations that can be possibly tuned all the way down to task concurrency, the number of writers. All of this can be very tedious for someone who is new to Presto and who just wants to use the power of Presto to query their data lake. And so with Ahana, you get Presto that's tuned out of the box. We tune more than 200 configuration parameters at the cluster level, at the node level, at the catalog properties level, all right out of the box. What does that look like?
Well, it doesn't look like very much, actually, because we take care of a lot of it for you. So when you create a cluster, you're only really asked to pick a very few number of things, the type of instances you want, the number of workers, but not a lot of configuration, because behind the scenes, we take care of a lot of these defaults for you.
Great. Number four. Now, we've created a cluster. We've created a compute plane to begin with. We've created clusters, no configuration needed. The next thing to query your data lake is integration of a catalog. And for the catalog, there are two really popular catalogs at the moment, Hive Metastore, HMS, and in the AWS world, it's Amazon Glue, the Glue service. And so with Ahana, you can bring your own catalog, very easy to integrate. We'll take a look at how. Or if you don't want to manage it at all, use the Hive Metastore that Ahana brings for you. So with every cluster, you can optionally choose to have a Hive Metastore. So let's take a look at how a catalog integration is done.
Yeah, quite simple, essentially. Let me go ahead and change here. We have these basically data sources out of the box. So if you have your data lake on S3, you can go ahead and configure it with your own standalone Hive Metastore. Or if you're using Glue, you can do the same. Like Dipti mentioned, we make it real easy. So if you don't have one already standing up, when you create your cluster, you can go ahead and have Ahana go ahead and manage a Hive Metastore for you on your behalf.
All right, so now we have our catalog integrated as well. And so that works great with S3. But number five, if we want to have other data sources that you'd like to query, this could be RDS, MySQL, Postgres, Redshift, Elastic, all very popular data sources that we hear about. And you could query S3 with RDS, MySQL, or S3 with Redshift, which is on the data warehouse side. This creates, it might be there are use cases where this can be very helpful. And with Ahana, it's really very easy to do. A couple of checks and you can get them connected to your cluster.
Yep. So we already talked about the Hibana Store and Glue. We have other popular cloud data sources for you. And as you select them, you'll have the configuration. If you have up and running clusters, like here I have an analytics cluster, it's very easy to go ahead. We make it very simple for you to go ahead and attach these clusters on your behalf. So that's the simplified data sources.
All right. So now we've covered kind of the base grounds, right? We have a compute plane, we have clusters created. Haven't done much to tune them. It comes pre-tuned. You can pick what config you want. Low concurrency, high concurrency. You have the data catalog, and you have the data sources. Now it gets to advanced things. Managing and scaling for your workload could be a little bit tricky. You might have queries that come in and hit the cluster that are unplanned and you want it to grow. You might have no workload that's running and you want to save your cost and scale down. And Ahana makes this really easy. Scale in, scale out is all automated. You can have a range of min and max that the cluster can live between, or even scale down all the way to 1. So let's see how users can take care of this.
Super simple. Again, we can configure a number of clusters. I actually here on this analytics cluster I have, it's actually an auto scaling cluster. Currently, you can see that the node count is at 1. The reason is I've kind of left it idle for a while, but really the cluster can, in this particular case, go up to 5. And this is automatically done. It'll detect the workload on the nodes. If it requires more CPU, it'll go ahead and scale out the cluster for you.
All right. Number 6.
7.
We're going to do this fast. A minute, a number. Now, if you want to speed up your queries, that's where the caching comes in. And caching can be, caching, cache consistency and naming are the 2 hardest things in computer science. But we've tried to make it easy. We have it as a one-click cache where you can have IO cache that's built into every worker. And so the data that's coming out of S3 gets cached straight in SSD's EBS volumes. And very soon, this is going to be powered by RaptorX, created at Meta, and will introduce additional layers of caching, which is the metadata cache, the fragment result set cache, as well as the header footer cache. So how easy it is. Is it really one click?
Yes, it is. So I go back to my create cluster page that we saw before. And if I really wanted to, I can go ahead and enable IO caching and it'll be there. I actually did this on my analytics cluster. What you'll see is the enable of the data lake IO caching. We even take care of sizing it appropriately for you.
That's great. And you have visibility into it with AWS. You can just click on some of these links and actually go and see what's being used, how much of it is being used, depending on your instance type. Number 8.
Oh, jumping ahead.
So now we get to the point where you have data in your data lake or data sources. You've maybe scaled it up and down. You've improved your query performance, but you don't want everyone to have access to your data, Wen. And so Stephen, Dipti, and Dave have access to the Presto data. Larry, Mo, and Curly, not so much. And so user management is made very easy with Ahana. All of this in our console. Let's take a look.
Right. So you have a centralized place where you can go ahead and define users. You can take a look at what the users are running. You can remove them if you want. Once you have these users, when you go ahead and create a cluster, you can select which of these users you want to be part of the cluster. And if at that point you don't see a user you like, you can go ahead and create it very easily. We put it right there for you. And then when you have running clusters that have users, at any time, you can always add more users, revoke access of users. I can change. I can maybe want to add another user here. Very easy to do. Centralized management of users, making it very easy to add, remove, modify as you need it for your clusters.
All right, number 9, even more advanced things. So now you have some users who have access to the cluster, But we don't want all of them to have access to everything. Here, Stephen and Dave have access to table A and B, but Dipti doesn't have access to table B. And that's where authorization comes in. Very excited about this. The community has requested Ranger integration with Presto over and over again. And so now you have Apache Ranger built in and integrated with Presto. Let's see what it looks like.
Yep. So you have your notion of users, and now you say you want some authorizations. You can go ahead and add an authorization service. Here, we're allowing you to configure it with Apache Ranger. You can go in, provide whatever configuration we need to connect to your Apache Ranger service, and all the identities that you have on your cluster will be backed by policies stored in Ranger.
Great. And later today, this afternoon, we have a great session by Privacera engineer Bill, as well as Ahana engineer Ritika, that will go into a lot more depth of the integration itself, the plugin, as well as how the two work together. Last one.
Yep.
Number 10. One click too fast, just like Ahana.
Yeah.
Lake Formation. Today we are announcing integration of Lake Formation with Presto, with Ahana. And this is another option for authorization. So within the open source community, Ranger is widely used, and we wanted to bring that out to the community. We are open, so the PR is out for Ranger, and it is open source. For Lake Formation, it is an AWS service. In fact, last week at reInvent, they announced a lot of new capabilities that were added to Lake Formation, along with column level, row level, filtering of data, and much more. And so today we now have integration. We're part of the early access program, and we are announcing this today. So let's take a look, Wen.
Yeah, and this one is very close to my heart because I've been personally working with AWS and our early customers on this over the last several months. So super excited to show this. So Lake Formation is tightly coupled with Glue. So the way you go ahead and work with Lake Formation here is through the Glue data source. And instead of now doing the traditional path where you access your data directly to Glue and S3, you can go ahead and enable AWS Lake Formation. What this will do is will allow you to configure your Ahana cluster or this particular connector as well to the Lake Formation service. We make that super easy to do. And once you have that, now all your access is controlled through Lake Formation and therefore the authorization as well. What you'll also have to do is you're going to have a bunch of users and you're going to have to map these Presto users to the IAM role or principal by which those policies are enforced. So I have a bunch of users here. I can go ahead and give them IAM roles. So for example, I could say, hey, Dipti, Will's your data analyst, Seb and myself are data engineers. And all the permissions associated with those roles will be enforced in my Presto queries.
Great. And we have another session on this, the Lake Formation session with Principal Product Manager of Lake Formation, Roy from Amazon, and Jalpreet from Ahana. They'll be talking about this integration and in depth later on today as well. So I hope you can join that. One last thing. Ahana is a big fan of community-driven open source. Presto is a community project, part of the Linux Foundation. We truly believe in working together and giving back to the community and driving it together. So we are very excited to be here. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this session. Enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Wen.
Thank you. See ya.
Back to you, Patricia.